Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and today I'm here with this fantastic 500 SL. Now Mercedes were always known for making quality, well-built cars, but they were never really cutting edge in terms of technology. The R129 was an era-defining car because for the very first time it combined that Titanic build with the latest technology. No Mercedes since, in my view, has been able to combine both in the same way. Now, it may sound counterintuitive, but today I'm going to argue that the very success of this car actually ended up threatening Mercedes and led to the wilderness years of the late 90s and mid 2000s.
Thank you to Bidding Classics for sponsoring today's video. Check out this online auction for classic cars with no buyer's fees.
When it originally came out, the 500 SL was priced at £58,000. In today's money, that's about £150,000. It was a remarkable car. It was as fast as a Ferrari 328. It was the very first to have an automatic rollover protection bar, which came up in fractions of a fraction of a second. It was the very first to have a fully automated hood. Sure, other cars maybe had a partly automated hood, but you always had to undo clips or something of that kind. This doesn't. You pull the button, it does everything itself, stows away, comes back up, click of a button. Incredible. It was the very first to have integrated seatbelt reels within the seats. It had the latest cutting edge ABS and a multitude of ECUs. Let's take it out now. I'll tell you what makes it so good and why that ended up damaging Mercedes. The interior is really indicative of what makes this car so special. It has just been designed to within an inch of its life. Everything works so well. The driving position is absolutely spot on. There's lots of adjustability, plus you have the wheel where you want it, your legs are nice and comfortable, lots of adjustability. The interior itself is hewn out of solid rock. They are so nicely made and everything just is built to work for the driver. So this heating system, the controls with the rotary knobs, so simple, works so well. You know, heated seat controls here, window switches, and weirdly, one thing that it did have, another technological oddity, is that the rear mirror is not to be adjusted by hand. You will break it. There is actually a little knob down here and it is adjusted electrically, which was just absolutely bizarre. The way the controls for the seat are just integrated into the side of the door there, so intuitive, just genius really. The clocks are an example of absolute German perfection. I think this era of Mercedes in particular just had a perfect design. My W124 as well. It is just absolute genius. At the bottom, a row of sort of possible fault lights. They never really needed to do anything more than this. And the interior hasn't really aged particularly either. It's for a car which is now coming on to 30 years old, more than 30 years old, it's unbelievable. It was never really meant to be an out-and-out performance car, but let's just see how it goes if you plant your foot down the road. It's not exciting, but it isn't exactly slow either. And also it's just deceptive because it is so smooth, just how well it goes. The Slushmatic, this is a 4-speed. In the later cars, I think they got in a 5-speed. Probably much maligned now because it is that old style, unresponsive gearbox, but it works so well here. That torque converter actually has so much smoothness. It's absolutely aligned perfectly to the rest of the car. The R129 was based on a shortened W124 chassis, and can maybe feel it a little bit, although I think this is more responsive. I think they fine-tuned the suspension, maybe changed the layout slightly, because it definitely is less wallowy and better than a W124. It is, however, still very softly sprung. That works perfectly with what it was intended to do, and it has the added benefit that the chassis on really bumpy surfaces, you can just about feel a little bit of shudder and flex. If the suspension wasn't so soft, I think that would be much more prevalent and it would really spoil the experience. Although it's torquey and very drivable, the V8 really does pick up power as you go past 3.5, 4,000. Now, the suspension is really a bit too soft to take too many liberties with these. So, although it's perfectly competent at these speeds, you can already feel that if you're going to chuck it in a corner a bit too hard, it's going to start wallowing all over the place. Under brakes as well, there's a bit of movement. But you can still drive it quite quickly. The suspension and the damping is spot on, so bumps just don't upset it at all. The brakes feel pretty strong, they're quite nicely charged. The pedal has a little bit more travel than I would like, but there's feel there, they work okay. The throttle pedal is the one thing that I think isn't really, I don't know, it's floor hinged by the feel of it, and it just has a bit of an unnatural feeling to it. It's not terrible, but it's one of the things I don't particularly like about this. The other thing is the steering. It is, again, it works as intended. I think if you're just touring, you just don't think about it and it's okay. The moment you think about it though, and think about what the car's doing, and it's very ponderous to turn, and there is absolutely zero feel. Those though are really my harshest criticisms, and they're not really that valid in a way because of the car's nature. They don't really impact on it very much as a tourer. The V8 has 320 horsepower and is absolutely delightfully silky smooth. One of the downsides of all the technology is that these can be quite scary for some people in terms of things going wrong. I don't really think that they're all that bad, but the first tranche of production fell within the biodegradable wiring looms. Bizarrely, I think there was some law in Germany that car companies had to make products that were recyclable or biodegradable, so Merck designed into the loom that after about 15 or 20 years it would just start to crumble, which is what they do. I don't know if this falls within that. Everything works fine, so probably not. Also, the number of ECUs mean that things can go wrong, and that amazing hood, the flip side is that, again, it's hydraulically powered, I believe. They're quite complex and things can go wrong with them. Now, some of you might know that I owned the model previous to this, the 107 series. And it's quite odd that I am heaping praise on this car because the R107 is one of my most hated cars. The reason for that is that I spent a couple of years fixing mine. They do have some design faults despite what people think about them, and really frustratingly, once I had fixed it, it was pretty horrible to drive. It used huge amounts of petrol even when driven very, very slowly, and the drive itself was, even for what was supposed to be a tourer, I guess, a boulevard cruiser, it was just terrible. There was so much movement in the suspension, it was so soft, I found the seats uncomfortable. That was a car that I really did end up disliking. I don't think 107 owners are my biggest fans, but I do understand that there is a place, for everybody, whatever car you like. I understand some people might like those, but this was such a huge step forward and it addressed all those concerns. The 107 was nicely made, but it was really, even at the time, using in some ways quite old technology, especially by the time it went out production. This, when it came in, was absolutely cutting edge, and it does its role absolutely perfectly. So why then was it that it ended up damaging Mercedes? Well, as I said, I don't think it's ever been repeated since that a Merc had this blend of quality and technology. What happened after these, I think, is that they were so successful, they were so praised by the press, that Mercedes thought they could perhaps get away with producing high-tech cars and no longer having to concentrate so much on the quality. As a result, cars like the W220 S-Class, I think it was the W210, the E-Class came out, which when they were new were excellent. They drove very, very well. But in a very short space of time, they developed huge amounts of faults and, incredibly for Mercedes, a real rust problem. So in a way, Merc were lulled into a sense of, okay, this car was so good because of the new technology, that's what we're going to concentrate on at the detriment of quality. And that really threatened the company. In the late 90s and the early 2000s, they had to do a lot of work to rehabilitate their reputation. They did manage it in the end, but even now, I don't think that modern Mercs are made with quite the same thought as these. Because everything is to hand, everything is so simple, these are so easy to drive. They must be amongst some of the easiest cars in the world for you to literally just get into straight away and feel immediately comfortable. So we say this quite flippantly, you know, like peak Mercedes, peak BMW, but I think that with the R129, it probably is quite justified. This really was an incredible car in every sense and brought out the absolute best from Mercedes. I know the modern cars are now pretty good again, but in terms of quality and attention to detail, I wonder if they still approach these. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want me to do a review on your car, please contact me, and I really look forward to seeing you for the next video.